The camp felt suffocating as I entered it, the familiar sights now reminders of my confinement. I stepped into my den, the silence wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. Curling up on the cold dirt, I stared blankly at the wall, Winter's words echoing in my mind.
Orders are given. You follow them the first time.
The words cut deep, carving into my resolve. I curled tighter into myself, my chest heavy with regret.
It's too late now. I failed.
But then, faint and barely there, a flicker of determination sparked. Next time,
I'll do better. Next time, I'll listen. I have to.
tears threatened again, but I pushed them away, burying my face in my paws.
Do better. Listen. Be better.
It became a mantra, a fragile promise to myself in the quiet darkness of the den. Lying in the dim silence of my den, I couldn't shake the thoughts circling in my mind.
How could I get better? How could I make sure this never happened again?
I stared at the dirt floor, my chest tightening with frustration. I couldn't just lie here feeling sorry for myself. That wouldn't help.
What if I practiced?
The thought flickered through me like a spark, small but growing. I knew the commands by heart, even if my steps were slow.
If I practiced here by myself, maybe, just maybe, I could be better next time.
I sat up, determination burning away the exhaustion.
Even if I don't hear everything Winter says, I can still follow his commands. That's what matters most, right?
The commands weren't just meaningless words. They were rules. Rules for those in charge. For those who lead. And maybe, just maybe, practicing might help me strengthen my paws too.
So, when the time comes and I need to run for help, I'll be ready. I'll never hesitate again.
With a deep breath, I stood and began. My steps were clumsy at first, but I worked through the commands slowly, one by one. I didn't have Winter barking at me or the pressure of his gaze. Here, in the quiet of my den, I could move at my own pace, thinking through each step carefully. But I didn't stop there. I started mixing the commands around on purpose, making sure I didn't just memorize the sequence, but understood the commands themselves. If I ever need to respond to just one, I need to know exactly what to do without thinking. The thought drove me, pushing me to repeat the drills over and over, the rhythm becoming second nature. The more I worked, the more determined I became. My paws ached and my breath came in short bursts, but I didn't stop. Each step felt sharper, more deliberate. Each command I recited silently became a promise to myself.
Next time, I'll get it right. Next time, I won't fail.
Hours seemed to pass unnoticed as I worked, the weight of my confinement fading into the background. I focused on the task, on the rhythm of my paws, and on the faint hope that this effort might be enough. Eventually, my legs gave out beneath me, exhaustion finally overtaking determination. I dragged myself back to my bed, my body heavy but my spirit lighter than it had been in days. As I collapsed onto the dirt, sleep pulled me under almost instantly. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't running from shame or doubt. I was running towards something better. The sleep still lingered in my mind as I woke to the sharp bark of Winter's voice.
Time to start.
For a moment I hesitated, remembering the clear skies and open spaces from my dream. But then the coldness of reality set in, and I stood quickly, shaking off the lingering feeling of peace. This wasn't the dream anymore. This was Winter, and I had tasks to complete. My resolve tightened as I stepped out of the den. Today, I wouldn't let his sharpness get to me. Today, I would show him and myself what I was capable of. Winter stood waiting, his posture as rigid and unyielding as ever. He gave no hint of what he was thinking, but deep down he observed me carefully.
She's not dragging her paws today, he noted. Good. But resolve doesn't mean anything without action. Let's see if she can keep it up. Let's go!
He barked.
We're late. Today, chores. Then we'll head out for hunting.
I couldn't stop the flicker of doubt in my mind.
Hunting? Sure. That's what you said yesterday, and look where that got me.
But I bit back the sarcasm and nodded.
It doesn't matter if he's testing me. I'll pass no matter what.
Winter led the way, his gaze occasionally flicking back to check my pace. He didn't say anything, but his thoughts churned.
She's holding herself better. No hesitation in her steps. Good. But one mistake will show if this resolve is real, or if she's just playing brave.
The first task was a simple one, but my paws trembled slightly as I started. Winter's sharp voice cut through the air at the first mistake.
Wrong. Fix it. Again.
I flinched but quickly corrected myself, moving faster this time. 2 more mistakes followed, each met with his cold, deliberate tone.
Number. That's not it. Do it again.
The sting of his critique burned, but I didn't let it stop me. 3 mistakes, I thought.
That's it. No more. I'm finishing this.
I forced myself to focus, blocking out everything but the task in front of me. My paws moved steadily, and after what felt like an eternity,
I got it right.
Good.
Winter said flatly.
Let's go. We're late.
His words were devoid of praise, but they carried a weight I hadn't noticed before. He wasn't ignoring my success. He was acknowledging it in his own way. I straightened slightly, my chest tightening with a small flicker of pride.
I did it.
As we moved to the next task, Winter's gaze remained unreadable, but his thoughts lingered on my progress.
She's improving. But determination can crumble under pressure. Let's see how long she can hold on to it.
Another pup, Sky, joined us at the next task. She stumbled, her small frame struggling under Winter's sharp corrections.
No.
He barked at her.
Again. Start over.
I paused, watching her ears flatten as she reset the task. It hit me then. Winter wasn't just cold to me. He was like this with everyone. The realization brought an odd sense of clarity. This isn't personal. This is just who he is. Winter glanced at me, noting my stillness.
Good. She's paying attention. Maybe she'll learn something.
He returned his focus to Sky, barking more corrections until she finally completed the task. When we moved on, I felt a flicker of understanding settle in my chest. Even his acknowledgement, no matter how small, is his way of saying I'm doing well. That's all I need right now. My tail wagged at the thought, but in my distraction, I knocked over a pile of supplies. Winter's bark snapped me back to reality.
What are you doing? You're causing a mess. Clean it up now.
His tone was sharp, but not angry. His words deliberate.
Focus on your task. You should realize where you are.
I scrambled to fix the mess, my ears burning with embarrassment. But as I worked, his words replayed in my mind. Focus on your task. You should realize where you are. He wasn't wrong. I needed to stay focused, to keep my resolve steady no matter how difficult it became. When the supplies were cleaned, I stood straighter, my determination burning brighter. He's not here to break me. He's here to teach me. And if that means enduring his sharpness, so be it.
I'll learn. I'll do better. I won't let him or myself down.
Winter's gaze lingered on me for a moment, his expression unreadable.
Good. She's standing tall again. Let's see how long she can keep that fire.
And so, with resolve steady in my chest, I followed him to the next task, ready to face whatever sharp words or challenges came my way. I'll get better. I'll be stronger. And one day, I'll make him and myself proud. Finally, Sky managed to finish her last task. Watching her struggle under Winter's sharp, relentless corrections made me feel a little sorry for her. His cold barks echoed through the air, and I could see her paws tremble with each mistake. But she pulled through, and when she completed the task, Winter's response was, as always, flat and emotionless.
Good.
No praise, no encouragement, just the same word he always used. Yet somehow, hearing him say it still sparked a flicker of pride in me. I couldn't help wagging my tail, but this time I was careful not to knock anything over. We were already moving on to the next task, and I couldn't stop the joy bubbling inside me. As we walked, I felt Winter's cold gaze on me, studying me with that unreadable expression of his.
Why is she so happy? He thought. I've never seen her like this before. She used to drag herself around camp, looking defeated, broken. And now, what is this sudden change? Is it an act, or,
His thoughts lingered for a moment before he dismissed them.
well, it's nice to see, I suppose. But she'd better hold on to that joy. The next task will be harder, and after that, we'll revisit yesterday's drill and see if she's actually learned anything.
The next task was helping the elders. I took a deep breath as we approached, trying to steady myself. Before, I could have gotten away with just helping them here or there. Enough to say I'd done the job. But with Winter behind me, I knew that wouldn't fly. If I didn't meet his high standards, there'd be no end to the criticism. For a moment, my tail drooped at the thought. But I shook it off quickly.
No, I told myself firmly. I can do this. It can't be worse than being humiliated in front of the entire pack, or being forced to train with pups. I'll show him I can handle this.
Determined, I squared my shoulders and took a deep breath.
Let's go, we're late.
I said sharply, almost surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. Winter's ears flicked as he caught my words, and his cold gaze shifted toward me.
What did she just say?
He thought, his eyes narrowing slightly. But he didn't comment, instead giving me a brief glance before following me inside. The moment I started working, Winter's criticisms began.
No, do it right.
He barked, his tone cold and precise. My pause faltered for a second, but I quickly corrected myself, refusing to let his words throw me off. Before Winter could say more, a deep, commanding voice broke through the air.
Leave her be, Winter. She's doing fine.
I glanced up to see Elder Alder, a massive wolf with scars lining his face and body, watching us from where he sat. His calm yet powerful presence filled the space. Winter turned to him, bowing his head slightly in deference.
She needs to know the right way.
He replied, his voice steady and unyielding. Alder gave a low, rumbling chuckle as he sat up straighter.
Oh, very well, pup. I'll leave you be.
The sight of Winter being called a pup by one of the elders was too much to ignore. A chuckle escaped me before I could stop it, and I quickly clamped my jaws shut, biting back a grin. But the damage was done. Winter's sharp bark cut through the air like ice.
Enough. Focus on your task.
I flinched slightly but nodded quickly, my tail dipping as I returned to my work. His tone wasn't angry, but it carried the usual sharpness that reminded me where I stood.
No time for laughs, I told myself. Get back to work.
Determined not to give him any more reasons to critique me, I threw myself into the task, every movement deliberate and careful. Even with Winter's cold gaze following my every step and the elders watching silently, I focused on doing everything right.
I can do this.
I repeated to myself.
I'll get it right.
Behind me, Winter observed silently, his sharp gaze noting every detail.
She's making progress, he thought, but let's see how long she can maintain it.
The task was almost done, though a few more mistakes set me back. With each sharp correction from Winter, I adjusted, determined not to let his cold tone rattle me. Finally, I completed the last step, relief washing over me. But before I could step back, Elder Alder's deep voice rumbled from behind me.
Young wolf,
He said, his tone calm but firm.
has something changed? You seem better than you've been in many moons.
I turned to face him, tilting my head slightly in curiosity. Alder's gaze was steady, his scarred face thoughtful.
I've watched you come here, taking care of us old dogs, handling these tasks. If I remember correctly,
He continued.
you never had a mentor after Wolfgang. Ah, yes, Wolfgang. He was much happier back then, held himself high and made you work hard.
Alder paused, his expression distant as though lost in a memory.
Though not as hard as you are working now. Even then, you were never this.
He trailed off, his words fading as he turned and walked away toward his bed. I watched him settle down, my heart twisting at his words. His tone wasn't cruel, but it stirred something in me, something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I stood frozen, Alder's words replaying in my mind. Wolfgang. He trained me back then, didn't he? My tail sank to the ground as the memories clawed their way back. Back then, I wouldn't have called it training. I learned quickly that unlike my peers who were trained as alphas, I was not. And when I found out, I had snapped at Wolfgang. I ignored his commands. I dismissed him outright. Even on that day, the day everything changed, I refused to listen. My paws felt heavy as I sank to the ground, my thoughts swirling with shame and regret. I messed up. Again and again, I messed up. The weight of my past mistakes pressed down on me like stones. But as I stared at the dirt beneath my paws, a flicker of something stronger rose in my chest.
I won't care about being an alpha or an omega anymore.
I thought firmly.
It doesn't matter what rank I hold. What matters is that I help this pack, no matter what I become.
I pushed myself to my feet, my voice steady and bold as I declared,
From now on, I won't care if I become an alpha or an omega. I will train to help this pack, whatever I may be.
Winter stood nearby, watching silently as Alder spoke to me. He saw the moment Alder's words struck a nerve and the weight of my memories dragged me down. At first, he thought to bark at me, to snap me out of it. But something stopped him. He waited, his sharp eyes watching closely as I wrestled with my thoughts.
Let's see what she does.
He thought, his gaze narrowing slightly.
Let's see if she can find her resolve.
And then, to his surprise, I didn't just find my resolve. I found something deeper. He blinked, his expression calm but thoughtful as I barked out my vow, my voice ringing with determination. Winter's chest swelled with something unfamiliar. Pride. But he quickly forced it to fade.
No room for emotion.
He told himself, though the flicker of pride lingered. When I stepped toward him boldly, my head held high, and asked sharply,
What is our next task?
His eyes met mine. For a moment he said nothing, his cold demeanor unchanged. But inside, his thoughts churned.
She's different now. Let's see how far this resolve can take her.
Finally, Winter gave a curt nod.
Let's get going. The clearing outside of camp.
He said sharply, turning on his heels without another word. I followed, my steps steady and confident. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready. This was no longer about proving myself to Winter or the pack. This was about becoming the wolf I knew I could be. We arrived at the clearing, the same place as before. I felt a flicker of frustration, but quickly pushed it aside.
Here again, fine.
This time,
I won't fail.
Winter turned to me, his cold gaze locking on mine.
I give an order. You listen the first time.
He said sharply, his tone deliberate.
You're allowed 2 mistakes out of 5 commands. Should you fail, you'll return to camp and we'll practice listening at the pup's clearing. That will be your punishment for not listening.
The words hit me hard, but I didn't let my resolve waver. I nodded, every fiber of my being focused on what he was saying. Not on the task, not on the challenge, just the order. That's all that matters. His first command was simple. He pointed.
Stand over there.
I moved quickly, positioning myself exactly where he indicated. He continued, his voice sharp.
Back farther. Into the trees.
I followed without hesitation, weaving through the underbrush.
Drop to the ground, roll, and duck under that bush.
I moved as fast as I could, but my paws stumbled, catching on roots. I tripped and fell hard to the ground. Winter's sharp bark snapped through the clearing.
Again.
Gritting my teeth, I reset and tried again, but my timing was off. His voice cut through the air like a whip.
Number again.
My legs trembled as I reset for the 3rd time. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to stop, but I forced myself to push forward. This time, I completed the sequence, barely pulling it off. A split second slower, and he would have barked at me again. My chest heaved as I tried to catch my breath, but Winter's commands came faster now.
Forward, back, run to your right, turn back.
He barked, his tone never wavering. I followed each order, my paws moving on instinct. The commands blurred together, but I forced myself to focus on every word. Then came the hardest maneuver yet.
Drop, roll, jump, back to position 1.
I froze for a fraction of a second, my mind scrambling to process the sequence. Drop, roll, jump, position 1. Go! I lunged into the motion, but I stumbled, breaking the flow. Winter's bark cut through the clearing.
No. Again.
My heart pounded as I reset, determined to get it right. This time I moved faster, more deliberately. But I missed the timing, my paws out of sync.
No!
Winter barked sharply.
That's your last try.
I stopped, my chest heaving, my head low as I waited for his judgment.
I failed, again.
But instead of berating me, Winter walked up to me, his cold gaze steady.
Good.
He said, his tone flat.
Now, what were my orders at the beginning?
I blinked at him, the question cutting through my exhaustion. I straightened myself, breathing hard but standing squarely. I met his gaze and repeated his words exactly.
You give an order. I listened the first time.
Winter held my gaze for a moment longer, his expression unreadable. But inside his thoughts churned.
She listened. She remembered. She's learning. Good.
Winter's sharp bark brought me out of my thoughts.
Good. We can go hunt. Feel free to sniff for any prey as we search.
I froze for a moment, his words not quite registering. Then it hit me.
Hunting? Did he really just say we're going hunting?
My tail started wagging uncontrollably, faster than it had in moons. I felt a spark of excitement bloom in my chest, so strong it almost knocked the breath out of me. I stopped abruptly, tilting my head at him, unsure if I'd heard correctly.
Wait, are you serious?
I asked, my voice practically trembling with disbelief.
I thought you said if I failed, I was supposed to go back to camp.
Winter's cold, blank stare fixed on me, his tone sharp and deliberate.
Do you want to hunt? Or would you rather be treated as a pup,
My tail immediately drooped, the thought of going back to camp like a scolded pup making my ears flatten against my head. No way. I can't go back to that. But then his words fully registered, and my tail shot back up, wagging furiously.
Nope. Hunting it is. Let's go.
I barked enthusiastically, my voice loud and clear. Winter blinked once, his gaze narrowing slightly. He said nothing, but there was a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Turning sharply, he started walking, his tone curt as he called over his shoulder.
Good. Keep up.
I practically bounced forward, my paws light with excitement.
This is it.
I thought, my chest swelling with determination.
A real hunt. A chance to prove myself. No tasks, no drills. This is what I've been waiting for.